Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hello to everyone. Welcome to MS&Me Radio. This is the first episode of one of the brand new shows on MS&Me Radio. The show is called Chronically Well Club, and I am your host. My name is Rebecca Naylor, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And today's episode is called The 8 Keys. So I'm going to start today's episode by telling you a little bit about myself, some of my story, how I was approached about doing this radio show, why I decided to do the show, and what my major philosophy is about healing from multiple sclerosis, and how you can also heal using some of the 8 keys that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to overview in this particular show, and I'm going to talk about them weekly on this new half-hour radio show that I have been very gratefully offered by MS&Me. So let's get started. My name is Rebecca Naylor. As I said, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I am just a month shy of my 38th birthday, and it has been now just over 20 years since I was first diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis in 1997. At the time I was living in London, Ontario. I originally come from the United Kingdom, and I've been in Canada for almost my entire life. When I was first hit with multiple sclerosis, wow, where to start? I was young, 17. They were able to diagnose it quite quickly because my dad had MS. He had been diagnosed when he was 35. I grew up in an MS family. We volunteered with the MS Society of Canada. We ran the Carnation campaign. We did the MS Readathon, the MS Walk as a family. So when I first started to show my symptoms, it was pretty clear, especially because my first symptom was identical to my dad's, what was happening. What was different is that it happened to me so much sooner. So I was 17, like I said, my dad was 35, and actually later on, my uncle would be diagnosed at the age of 59. So what happened to me first? Well, some of you can probably relate to the numerous symptoms that I had over the course of that year back in 1997. So the very first symptom I had turned out to be what is known as optic neuritis. So optic neuritis is an inflammation of your optic nerve, which can cause pain in your eye, distorted color vision, blurred vision, and yeah, especially when you move your eyes up, down, to the side, kind of a stabbing pain in your eye, in your brain. Not very fun. So that was one of my first symptoms. One of my other symptoms was I couldn't really talk. For about 2 weeks. It was very, very odd. When I tried to speak, it sounded almost like when a person who is hard of hearing or deaf tries to speak, and you can sort of understand them, but the words are really jumbled together, sort of like, "Hi, my name is Rebecca Naylor." That's what it would sound like when I tried to talk. Really suddenly, out of the blue, for about 2 weeks. Then it went away. So that was interesting. Later on that year, I had all sorts of things happen. One day, just walking up a flight of stairs, I suddenly went paralyzed on the right side of my body. Absolutely terrifying. I'm sure there's some listeners out there who've experienced it themselves, or if you're a caregiver and you love someone with MS, you may have witnessed this. And yeah, it's a really scary thing to realize that you do not have control of your body. that your brain, what you've always trusted to be that control center, is giving directions that are literally not being responded to by your body. It feels like an immense betrayal. And I've worked really hard over the years to not see it that way, but to see my body as whole and working together rather than fighting against itself. So long story short, with all those many symptoms, they quickly came to the diagnosis of relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. What I remember most is that I was not very educated at the time by doctors. They kind of assumed that I knew all about MS because my dad had it. In fact, they never actually said you have MS. They said, we think you have what your dad has. So I just kind of had to start learning on my own. I did go on one of the disease-modifying therapies at the beginning. I took Rebif, one of the beta interferons, for 10 years, beginning in 1998 until 2008, when I made a decision, which I'll talk about in another episode, to stop that therapy with absolutely no consequences because I had learned how to heal myself. So I had to try and educate myself. So I started this mission, I guess, to really learn, how can I heal this? How can I learn how I might have contributed to this? What lifestyle factors might have contributed to this? I should preface this with the fact that in high school, I was being a bit of a typical teenager and I was maybe not treating my body so well. I really had no concept of the fact that what I put in my body and what I exposed my body to and how I thought in my mind, I did not understand that those things had consequences for my health, for my relationships, for how my body communicated. So it took a long time to learn that. So I have basically spent the last 20 years on an epic personal journey of discovery to learn how to heal myself. And it's been an amazing journey. After 10 years, as I mentioned, I decided that I was healthy enough that I did not feel that I needed the disease-modifying therapy anymore. So I made the decision to stop, and absolutely nothing changed. I stayed in remission. I've been in remission now for 19 of the 20 years. And that year, I decided I really wanted to challenge myself and just see how much I could push. I should say that I am naturally not athletic at all. I'm really cerebral, artistic, that's in my nature. Athletics is not. But I decided I wanted to run a marathon. I just wanted to see how much I could push my body and how much I could control the development of my health. So I did it. It took me a year. 2007, I ran a couple of half marathons and then one full marathon. Ran, I use that word lightly. It's more like I sort of jogged it. It did take me 5 hours and 22 minutes, but I did it. And that was like hugely eye-opening to me. Like, wow, in 10 years, I've gone from a doctor telling me, I'm sure you've all experienced this, oh, there's a 25% chance that you'll be in a wheelchair in 10 years. Like, that's an awesome thing to say to a 17-year-old who's trying to figure out how this massive news is going to impact the creation of their identity and their life, right? So yeah, I was like, I did this and this is amazing. So it was at that point I started to really think about how I can share what I'm doing with other people. And for the next 10 years, I just have been kind of doing this quietly and informally. Anytime I heard about other people with MS or struggling with autoimmunity in general, or really health in general, I would be happy to share. I try not to be one of those people that pushes my ideas, but other people tend to observe my health, observe my vitality, and eventually just ask me, so what are you doing? How did you make that choice? And so I've been kind of coaching on the side, just as I came across people for the past 10 years, and really enjoying serving my community. Now this year, July 4th, 2017 marked exactly 20 years since I was diagnosed. Now, I had celebrated 10 years with that journey of training for the marathon. And I started to think, how can I celebrate 2017, 20 years in remission from multiple sclerosis, 20 years since my diagnosis. So what I decided to do was basically commit the rest of my life here to helping others in this community. And when I thought about how to do that, I decided I was just going to start. I wasn't going to spend so much time deciding how to do it. I was just going to start. So January 1st, I launched something called Chronically Well Club. Now, I didn't exactly know what it was going to be at the time. It started out as some individual health coaching. I one-on-one worked with a number of people. It eventually became written blogs on my website, sharing resources with the MS community. It then moved into meeting a lot of people who were really interested in the ideas I was sharing. And it was amazing to see how much interest there was. And oh my goodness, then I discovered social media. So I started doing my video blogs not very long ago. And I've been getting an amazing response that has just been so heartwarming. And that's what really motivated me to keep putting myself out there and sharing. And what am I sharing? I'm sharing the answer to this question that I get all the time. And the question is this: how did you do it? I wish there was a one-sentence answer. I literally get that question all the time. I get people messaging me on social media sites, asking me in person, pulling me aside at the photocopier at work, and they all want to know the same thing. I heard you've had MS for 20 years. I heard that you're in remission. My niece has MS, or my sister has MS, or my neighbor has MS. What can I tell them? What did you do? And again, it's not a magic pill. It's not something I can boil down to a sentence. So as I've been developing Chronically Well Club over the past year, I really started to think about how can I best communicate the answer to that question. And I put a lot of time and effort into really trying to put down on paper and in my mind and in my video blogs the answer to that question. How did I do it? And so what I've realized is that it's a really multifaceted answer. There is no one thing that you can do to heal yourself from MS. But there are many things you can do to heal yourself from MS. And that actually is kind of more exciting, right? We really have a lot of power. It's a multifaceted approach. And my mission with Chronically Well Club is to help, to serve, to educate other people to basically discover their body's innate power to heal. Your body is incredible. Like, we are so complex and there's so many amazing things happening in your body at any moment that you are not even aware of, right? Your body's ability to heal itself from everything from a viral attack to the tiniest paper cut to a bullet wound, never ceases to amaze. And a lot of times we're our own worst enemy, getting in the way of that healing process. So a lot of times it's not about trying to control the healing or trying to apply something externally to the healing. It's about looking inside and recognizing where we're getting in our own way. How are we maybe preventing our bodies from doing what they naturally want to do to follow that self-guided intuitive healing process? So I developed what I call the 8 keys, and I'm actually in the process of writing a book because I really want to share this information that I've found to be so profound and so powerful with as many people as possible. I also love to write, so that's kind of convenient. But I thought I would also use this radio show to give tips and resources and share some of the things that I have discovered that I'm going to be talking about in more depth in the book as well. So I want to really thank the MS Global Support Network for giving me this opportunity to introduce you to these ideas and really my philosophy of how we can, as I said, reclaim our power, right? Discover our power to heal and recreate our health. So what are these 8 keys that I'm talking about? Well, I started to look at all the different areas of my life and what are the things that I have been manipulating over the course of the past 20 years or experimenting with or growing or developing, and how have I seen the results that have led to such fantastic health and well-being. I've been able to narrow it down as I said, to 8 different areas. And each one of those 8 areas could be divided into hundreds of sub areas, which is why this is eventually all going to be in written form. But I thought, since this is the very first premiere episode of this radio show, Chronically Well Club, with me, your host, Rebecca Naylor, I would start by just identifying what are these 8 keys, and you can decide if these are things that you want to learn some more about, and then choose to tune in on a weekly basis for this new show. So let's get started. The 8 keys of healing from multiple sclerosis, according to me. So yeah, the first one, I'm going to start with some of the ones that are more obvious, and the ones that I started with when I was younger, and I really was young when I started this journey, right? 17. So I'm going to start with the ones that are more obvious and save the ones that I consider maybe the least well known, but kind of actually the most important. I'll save them more for the end. So the first one I'm going to talk briefly about is your diet. Okay, your diet is a very, very, very important component to most likely how you developed or at least triggered your predisposition to multiple sclerosis, which, can be upsetting, but also really empowering when you think of it as the possibility you have to make the lifestyle changes that you need to in order to heal from where you are right now. So the important thing to think about is the fact that you have control. You have choice. Everything in life is a choice. This is like my overarching philosophy of like my entire life, but especially this approach to healing from MS. Everything is a choice. I've experimented a lot with my diet. There was a time when I was vegan for like 3 years, and in a very condensed way of explaining it, veganism is a very amazing nutritional way of eating that is fantastic for a lot of people. However, in North American vegans tend to actually eat a lot of grains, a lot of nightshade vegetables, which are like tomatoes, white potatoes, peppers, eggplant, things like that. But it's a very grain-based diet for vegans in North America. And so even though it's very nutritionally dense and really awesome in that way, it's not necessarily great for people with multiple sclerosis, because grains, as I'm going to talk more about in future radio shows, are very inflammatory for people with multiple sclerosis. So I've actually really transitioned and now follow a diet that is more loosely based on like an autoimmune paleo type of diet, where I eat about maybe 80% mostly vegetables with some fruit, and then a small part of my diet that is very high quality grass-fed meats, organic, and no grains, no dairy. So that's just a little bit of an introduction to what I eat, and I can tell you that there are so many different experiments you can do to really see for yourself the direct way that what you put in your body manifests in your physiology. So I'm going to be talking on this radio show quite a lot about diet, what we eat, why we eat it, and how it affects the average population, and how that might be different for people who have MS and other autoimmune conditions. So that's the first key. The second key that I'm going to talk about, I call your toxins. The whole detox movement is something that has become increasingly popular really right across North America, and for a very good reason. We live in a massively, massively toxic world. And toxic exposure, again, is a big part of how people develop multiple sclerosis, how that predisposition is triggered, and also how it worsens and relapses get triggered over time. Toxic buildup is an accumulation in your body, and it can come from so many different places. It comes from our food and water. It comes from our environment. It comes from, it comes from the things in our home, our cleaning products, the pollution in the air. It's just everywhere. The products we put on our body, just the fact that we don't even walk on the earth anymore. So your toxic load is what I talk about a lot. Your toxic load is like the total amount of toxins that are in your body from all sources. And the goal for people with MS is always to reduce that toxic burden. Also interesting to know that you can have emotional toxins as well, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So, toxic load and decreasing your toxins, that is my second key that I'll be talking a lot about in this show. The third key that I've identified is what I call your movement. And I specifically chose to just say movement rather than the word exercise, because I find that when people hear the word exercise, they think, ugh, I have to go to the gym. I have to go to a cardio class or, do boot camp or something like that. And my philosophy of physical movement is always that it should be integrative, meaning it's part of your life. It's about functionality and how you move and how you bear physical load. And it's something that you work into all of your movements and how you relate with your world and your entire life. So it's not something where you stop your life, do your workout, and then go back to your life. It's about integrating movement on a regular basis into your life in a way that builds your strength, your dexterity, and really keeps you at peak physical fitness. This is important for people with MS for so many reasons. We need to stay physically strong so that if we do have relapses, we have the strength to get through them, right? But also with things like balance and energy, and fatigue, these things, even sexual issues, right? I'm going to talk about this. We're going to go deep. All of these things are related to our physical conditioning. So I'll be looking at that, and it's not just about exercise, it's also about body awareness. It's about the connection we have with our body and our understanding of our own functionality, how things work together, how we can influence in a more positive way how our body functions as a whole. So that was the next key, your movement. Moving on, the next key I've identified is what I call your emotions. And this is really my focus right now. When I started this journey 20 years ago, I was really focused on the physical, the tangible, like what we eat, how we move, diet and exercise was everything. And I have expanded that so much now. And I really, really am understanding more and more about how much of this comes from the way we think. The way we think and the way we feel. And those things go hand in hand because our emotions are created by our thoughts, right? The thought comes first, the feeling comes second most of the time, right? And we can actually have a lot of power over our emotions by self-directed thoughts. I mean, this is the basis of things like cognitive behavior therapy, as well as philosophies like science of mind, right? So having control of our emotions through our thoughts is something that I'll explore using many, many different principles. Everything from, things like nonviolent communication to dialectical behavior therapy. We'll look at psychological profiles and different methods of communication and how all of these things contribute to our overall stress level. As I talked about earlier, how much stress you have in your life is really directly proportional to how well you are with your multiple sclerosis. I notice personally as a teacher, which is my primary profession, that the more stress I have in my work environment, the more unhealthy I become. And the result is often almost immediate, where I can be perfectly fine in the morning and then something stressful will happen at work, and literally by the end of the period, I am finding that I am physically unwell. I may be having difficulty walking. I may be having issues with bladder and bowel function, which a lot of you are probably highly familiar with. I may be having extreme fatigue and even the cognitive symptoms, which are a challenge for a lot of us. Those can really be triggered by stressful situations where we become emotional. So I'll be talking about our emotions and specifically how our emotional stress responses affect our physiology in terms of things like cortisol and adrenaline and how that affects our multiple sclerosis. All right, so I've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna plow through here a couple of the other keys. The next one I call your environment. The word environment has come to be synonymous with our outdoor environment, the earth, and that is the primary place where we should be spending our time. We're meant to be in nature. We're meant to be in the sun, fresh air, grounding, getting into the grass, However, this is also about your home environment, right? So what kind of home environment are you in? The surroundings that you find yourself in have a direct impact on your emotions, right? And as we just talked, your emotions have a direct impact on your physiology. So this is all like a domino effect. We need to take care to be very selective about what we surround ourselves with. What are the images? What are the sounds, right? The sights. How do we design the spaces that we're in, both indoors and outdoors? All of these things have an effect, and there are many different types of pollution, right? Not just toxic pollution like from factories, but light pollution, noise pollution, clutter, and disorganization. All of these things can create negative environments, which eventually affect our multiple sclerosis. So your environment, indoors, outdoors, all very, very, very important. All right, we're getting into some other important ones here. Your gut. So your gut, a lot of people don't realize 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. And this is an autoimmune disorder. So very, very important to pay attention to our gut microbiome. Thinking about things like fermented foods, probiotics, prebiotics, making sure that we're finding out if there are any growths, overgrowths, or imbalances. We're replenishing, we're repairing, we're paying attention to our digestion and our bladder and bowel function. It really all starts in the gut. So in this area, I'll be talking about not just lifestyle medicine, but also something I really recommend called functional medicine, which is a new and powerful movement that is spreading across the world that I hope whatever country you're listening in, I hope it's starting to take root in your country. And so we'll talk more about that, about how we really can look inside the gut, see what's going on, and figure out how to fix it. The next area is your cognition, which means using your mental powers, right? Use it or lose it, making sure we're being active, we're reading, we're writing, we're playing a musical instrument, we're problem solving, we're doing word search puzzles, whatever we need to do to stay active, right? And then finally, your mindset. I'm not going to talk too much about this because it's for next week's topic, but you are what you think, right? You have the power to affirm, to visualize, to really accept responsibility for creating the life that you love. So your mindset and belief is at the core of everything. And those are my 8 keys. So I've got just over a minute left, so I'm going to finish up for now. Again, I'm Rebecca Naylor, your new host of Chronically Well Club Radio with MS&Me. If you're interested in checking me out on Facebook, search for Chronically Well Club. On YouTube, I also post my video blogs there. Search for Chronically Well Club, and you can check out my regular website, www.chronicallywell.club, where you can learn more about my individual health coaching, my home health audits, and other ways that I can help you to discover your power to heal and to recreate your health. So thank you so much for tuning in today for our very first episode. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you, my listeners. Please don't hesitate to reach out and contact me directly. My email address is rebecca@chronicallywell.club. That is REBECCA dot, let's see if I can do this, CHRONICALLYWELL.CLUB, Rebecca@chronicallywell.club. Get in touch. I would be happy to start a dialogue. For now, create an amazing day and be well.